Facebook. Just one second.
Mine says webinar is now streaming live on Facebook.
Awesome.
Happy Veterans Day, brothers and sisters.
I'm not sure how I can send this to V once we've already are live. Let's see.
We're waiting for a bit of Donna to join us. And I hope everybody's having a beautiful Veterans Day. The weather is fantastic. I'm disappointed that we're not marching in a Veterans Day parade. That's what we would normally be doing. Last year we marched in the New Braunfels Veterans Day parade and got to talk to Senator Donna Campbell. That was our objective. And she was there and she gave the Veterans Day speech, and Jason got a meeting with her, and that was fantastic. So we have a dialogue going with Senator Donna Campbell based on marching in the New Braunfels Veterans Day Parade. We have not converted her to supporting the kind of medical cannabis program we want in Texas, but we're not going away. So she'll keep hearing from us over and over and over again. And then
we don't quit. V, you made it. Yay. Okay, we're all here. Yay. Hi.
Then we marched in the Austin Veterans Day Parade under the banner of another organization, because Texas Veterans for Medical Marijuana got kicked out of the Austin Veterans Day Parade because they said legalizing marijuana is a political issue. They banned all political groups from marching in the Austin Veterans Day Parade. So I went to the board of directors for the Austin Veterans Day Parade, who are all veterans, Vietnam veterans and Cold War veterans. And I explained to them that medical marijuana in Texas is not a political issue. It's a veterans' health issue. That's how we see it. But they didn't see it my way, and they kicked us out. But we stood at the top of Congress Avenue, right in front of the Capitol, with our gigantic Texas Veterans for Medical Marijuana banner. And everybody in that parade, including those board members, saw our banner. And all those veterans in that parade gave us the thumbs up, and a lot of them came over and shook our hand.
Or tried to walk with us too.
Yeah.
There were several that were like, oh, well, we'll just come walk with you guys then. And we're like, okay, yeah. Sounds good.
We know that veterans in Texas support a medical marijuana program, except for a few old hardheads from back in the day. But that's what Texas Veterans for Medical Marijuana is. We are a message. We're not an organization, we're a message. And our message is cannabis is good medicine. And our objective, our mission, is to tell every single veteran in Texas that cannabis is good medicine. And we're going to keep spreading that message day after day until we get a good, solid medical marijuana program in Texas. So thank you for being with us today. Happy Veterans Day, Jason. Happy Veterans Day, Diana.
I'm not a veteran, for the record. I'm just here. I just love you guys and support.
Thank
just to be clear.
Thank you, Dave. Happy Veterans Day. Thank you, Jax, for always supporting us. You're an amazing support system for us.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Texas Veterans for Medical Marijuana would not exist if it wasn't for Jax and Heather and Cheyenne Weldon, leadership of the movement, who supported us from day one. And so the whole reason Texas Veterans for Medical Marijuana exists is because we had support from people who love veterans and people who want us to have a medical marijuana program in Texas for all veterans and all patients. And let's be clear, never compromise on the fact that we must have a medical marijuana program in Texas for all patients, all veterans. No compromise on that. As Romana always says, we don't leave anybody behind on the battlefield. And we're not going to leave anybody behind when we have a medical marijuana program. So
Right.
thank you for being with us today. I'll turn it over to Jack. She's going to be our MC.
Awesome. I'm super happy to be with you guys today. Normally, like Dave said, we're, marching in New Braunfels or marching in Austin or doing some kind of initiative where we can be together, and pandemic restrictions have just not let that happen. So all the parades are canceled. We're making our own event to connect with each other and to talk about veterans issues. I have not served, but I appreciate all of you for your service, and I'm glad to be able to be here and host and participate and help guide this conversation. I do want to let anybody who is watching us here on Zoom or through Facebook that we will be discussing some intense subjects. If you're having a difficult day today, or you might be triggered by some of the things that we're talking about, I just want to preliminarily say that we will be talking about PTSD, suicidal ideation, and other issues like that. So if that's something that maybe you're not in a space to hear today, I just want to give you that opportunity to not hear that and tune in another time. But to everyone who's ready to chat about that with us, we're going to be taking questions in the Q&A box below, or drop it in the comments on Facebook. And I would like to kind of first start with maybe a little introduction of each person that's here with us today. I was thinking we'll start with Viridiana, and then we'll go to Jason. And I think everybody knows David Bass. So, I mean, you could say another little something if you want, David, after Jason. So we'll go to V first.
Thank you, Jax. Hello, everybody. My name is Viridiana Edwards. I go by V. I am a U.S. Army veteran. I was injured in Afghanistan back in 2009. Because of those injuries, I am a disabled veteran now living in Texas. I always like to say living in Texas because it's a big deal. It's the way that it's the options that I have to treat my maladies. Depend on where I live. And because I live in Texas, I can only go with traditional Western medicine. Going that route ended up hurting me a lot more than it did actually helping me. I ended up with a bunch of medications, and about 70 to 80% of those medications were dealing with side effects from other medications. So it wasn't even dealing with anything that I needed help with necessarily. It was to alleviate symptoms from another medication. So, because of this, my husband started talking to me about cannabis, and, I did my research and I tried it. It was I can't even describe it. It was just night and day. Within minutes, I felt relief that I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't something that the medication could do for me. But cannabis did do it for me. And it allowed me to be a mother again, to be a wife to my husband, to be a daughter to my mother and father, and, a sister to my sisters, because those medications kind of kept me in this like zombie mode. I wasn't very active, just kind of stuck at home. So cannabis really did, it saved my life, and it helped me go back to a new normal. Because of that, I ended up starting my own company. I have Canopy Hemp Products, and I focus on high CBD hemp products, from edible to topical products. And I also do research specifically focused on medical cannabis. With Jax, along with the Foundation and Texas Veterans for Medical Marijuana Access, we launched a study to find out how many veterans and how many civilians are using medical cannabis illegally in Texas, because there is a lot of them. So part of what I do is I research. I'm an activist, and I just want to save as many people as I can, because cannabis saved my life. So now that's what I do. I dedicate my life to helping others, and specifically helping veterans, because as Dave mentioned earlier, you never leave a fallen comrade, and that's in and out of uniform. So it's something that I take very personally, when I took that oath, and up to now, I will continue fighting along with people like Jax, Dave, and Jason, and everybody else, so that veterans can have national medical cannabis access and not be limited to their resident.
Yes, that is very important, because I know not every state has a program that includes veterans or even has a program. So that's very important that whenever you serve the country, you come back and you can have the same quality, very high standard of service and medical treatment across the board. It should be standardized, right? Jason, let's hear a little bit about you.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for having me. It's an honor. My name is Jason Walker. I'm a retired Sergeant First Class from the Army. medically retired in 2017 after serving 20 years for PTSD. I'm 100% disabled because of that. And like many other veterans, I was on that pharmaceutical nightmare. I was on 10 different medications. And whenever I got out, I moved away from my support system to take on a job. And 3 months later, I was having suicide attempts. And then I moved home to Killeen, back to Killeen with my family. And that's when every one of my brothers that I've known for about 20 years, veteran brother, he had talked to me about cannabis because I had confided in him. I was telling him about the nightmares that I was having. And he had given me some that night. And like all the other vets that have gone through this, I found that I had some of the best sleep I've had in a long time that night. And my nightmares were going away. And so with the help of cannabis, I got off of 9 medications after I was on 10 because the VA took away one of those. That was my sleep medication. That was the only medication that was working for me at the time. But here I am, 2020, Veterans Day. And I'm sitting here with a smiling face because I'm living life again because of cannabis. This year, I've just been out skateboarding as much as I can. So that chronic pain qualities of slamming and hitting the ground has been pretty bad, and cannabis has been helping that too. And I just want
Wrecking and riding out there, huh?
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, I see you out there all the time. I'm always like, oh, I wish I had the balls to go do that. Because I'm like, I don't want to fall and hit the ground really hard.
Right? I can barely walk without falling. Imagine on wheels. No, I'd be on the floor all the time. That'd just be my life.
Yeah, it's a talent. You have a strong talent there, Jason. And then Dave, I know you spoke a little bit at the beginning, but if you just give us a little bit of your background before we start the conversation, that'd be great.
Well, I'm a veteran that engages in civil disobedience to use cannabis illegally in Texas. But a lot of veterans don't have that option. I was telling Jason, I'm having a metal fence put up in my backyard to replace the old wooden fence. And the crew came out this morning, and the first guy that showed up, he showed up a little early. And so I was sitting out there talking to him, and he's a medically retired staff sergeant from the Army out at Fort Hood. And he was an aviation mechanic, and he was out on training with the aircraft, and he fell out of a helicopter over there at Fort Hood. And you can imagine the injuries that he had. And so he was a staff sergeant, medically retired at 11 years with 90% disability. And he told me, he's telling me all of his injuries. It's horrific. And he deals with chronic pain, severe chronic pain, 24/7. But he has 3 little kids, and he has a wife. She has a job, but he still works building fences. So the VA's answer for him, like for all of us, is a handful of pills every day to deal with this terrible pain. You know, he's a veteran who has to think twice about engaging in civil disobedience and breaking the law because he has 3 little kids. You know, does he want to take that risk? And so he's dependent on the VA to help him with his injuries and his pain. But if we have a medical marijuana in Texas, a medical marijuana program in Texas, then he will have the option to legally use cannabis to help him with this excruciating pain that he deals with every day, and help him, you know, continue with his job and work as best he can. He can't, you know, work like other people can work, but the beautiful thing is this fence company in Killeen is veteran owned by a Navy veteran, and he hires disabled veterans, and he understands that there are limitations to what they can do, but he supports them, and helps them lead productive lives and have a good income to support their families. So this is an example of veterans supporting veterans. And so we need a medical marijuana program because there's lots of veterans in Texas, lots of patients that can't afford to break the law, no matter what their situation is, even if they're dying of cancer. There's things they have to think of. And one of our veterans posted on Facebook today, he has bladder cancer, so he's going to come over and we're going to talk about that. But now he's got to make some decisions about his treatment options. And if we had a medical marijuana program, then medical marijuana could be part of his treatment plan for bladder cancer. So this is very serious because veterans' lives depend on it. And so that's why we're so intense about it. That's why we're so focused on it, is we know veterans' lives depend on what we're doing. So thank you for supporting us and being part of our work.
Well, I know that you understand the trials that come with bladder cancer really well. So I know that you'll probably be a great resource and support to him. And I hope that his treatment is successful, of course. So I think before we kind of get started on everything, in case our viewers didn't know, pre-filing for bills for the legislative session started on Monday, and we already have over a dozen bills that have been filed in both the House and the Senate having to do with medical cannabis, penalty reduction for possession of cannabis, and also some legalization bills as well. And so what I want to do just real quick is I'm going to share my screen. If you'll give me just 1 second. I'm pretty sure everybody can see that. So if you go to texasnormal.org and you click the 87th Texas Ledge, this is a good page to bookmark because we will be updating it very regularly throughout the session. Anytime we get an alert that a new bill has been filed, we'll be putting it on here. You'll note that, for example, here's Senator Jose Menendez's bill. I can click right there, and it's going to open me up to actually the website where I'll be able to find all the information about it. So here we see, the bill caption and text, and down here at the bottom we see actions. So it has been filed and received. As it continues to move through the process, you'll be able to watch that there. Also, these tabs across the secondary group of tabs across the top are really helpful. The text version, so let's say you want to read up on what does the bill say, you can click there, and there's going to be all of the text for you. Additionally, you can look at the actions. Let me see if it'll tap. And that will be that lower part. It's just separated because as it goes through the process, there can be dozens of actions that are taken on this. In fact, for a bill to pass, you'll probably see about 36 different actions. And once there are companion bills filed, you'll be able to click here. Now, a companion bill is one that is identical to the bill in the other chamber, and so they can move kind of like simultaneously, or if one catches traction, it goes first, and then it can make it easier in conference, because basically if one version of the bill comes from the House and another version of the bill comes from the Senate, they have to come together and have conference to find, where is that negotiation point on what they want to see there. So I just wanted to show everybody that real quick. I do think it is important to note for this specific conversation today that Senator Jose Menendez has again authored his very in-depth and expansive medical cannabis bill. There's always things that can be done to improve, but this is a great bill that he has stalwartly put forth. He's a huge veteran advocate and is very supportive. He's in the San Antonio area, so there's a lot of veterans and military in his district. I also wanted to go down to Senator Roland Gutierrez right here. Now, I know that it says legalization next to it, but there is also a medical component to this bill. My understanding is that the senator does plan to make some adjustments and some tweaks to it. So those would not be made until it had a hearing. So the bill as it is will stay in this form, any of the bills, until they have a hearing. A hearing is the first opportunity to offer any amendments or any changes changes that they want to see. And so that's when we would see any of those little tweaks and corrections happen. So I just wanted to let everybody know, oops, I stopped sharing. My bad. Either way, if you go to the tab that says Take Action on texasnormal.org, there's actually 3 action alerts that you can participate in right now. One for penalty reduction, one for medical cannabis, and one for legalization. So I strongly encourage everyone to go ahead and reach out to your legislators. I know the session doesn't start until January 12th, but pre-filing is happening. We're in the middle of a pandemic. We don't know what the legislative session is going to look like, so we really need to have our support being voiced as soon as possible. I just saw an alert before this meeting or this conversation that the Sunset Committee hearing that was scheduled has been canceled due to COVID and is hoping to be rescheduled in December. So, you know, ideally with 8 months having passed since the beginning of this pandemic, we would have a pretty robust protocol and form and for what we can expect to have for these hearings, because as you know, there were interim charges for medical cannabis, vaping issues, and then also how the hemp program has rolled out. And almost all of those have been postponed or are only allowing virtual written testimony. So it's unfortunate that that Sunset Committee was moved, because for those of you that followed the hemp program, TDA is sunsetting this year, and sunset is basically any agency that is run by the state. Every 12 years, it times out, if you will. And if they want to continue that agency being around and functioning, they have to renew it, right? So they evaluate it during what's called the Sunset Committee. And they look at all the little things, what do they want to change? And typically they then just renew the agency. So it's very important. I mean, TDA oversees not only the hemp program, but a huge amount of agriculture. And for those of you that don't know, they actually also deal with feeding all of the kids in schools. So kids that are still getting meals, even though they're going to school virtually, that's thanks to TDA and the commissioner that they're getting that. So I'm hopeful that we'll get more information. I guess we would call him Speaker-elect, maybe, Chairman Dade Phelan. He has strong bipartisan support. He's putting together a committee to really delve into what is the session going to look like. It's extremely important to him to make sure that constituents are able to really engage. And if you've been up at the Capitol, you know that it's a lot of one-on-one meetings. It's a lot of in-person hearings. And if they're changing protocols, it may be where like one hearing actually takes up several hearing rooms to keep everyone spaced out. So I'm hopeful that we'll have more information soon, but I just wanted to give a little update on that. And then I would like to turn it over to V. I know V has been working really hard, really hard. Like when I say hundreds of hours of work, I am not being sarcastic. She is putting in hundreds of hours for the Texas patient study that should be coming out hopefully sometime around Thanksgiving. And I know that there's a citizen component to it, but there's also a veteran component to it. So I just wanted to turn it over to you, V, and get a few updates from you on what's going on. What are some of the important data points that you've seen?
Thank you so much, Jack. That was all very useful information. I learned a bunch of new things just now. So thank you. And I will also be clicking to let my senator know, hey, you better vote on that bill. So yes, been working very hard on this study. And initially, like we've spoken before, this was going to be just for veterans. It wasn't going to go up to the citizens. It was just enough for civilians. This study was going to be focused just for veterans. But as you're doing it, you kind of realize that there's, it's not limited to just veterans that are using medical cannabis. For this study, we actually had 643 veteran responses. We had an amazing response come from our veterans. Thank you so much. Your responses are very helpful, because this is how we show our legislators, look, this is what they have to say. This is what's going on. So your responses were very helpful. So like I said, we had 643 responses from veterans. Of those responses, 425 veterans are using the illegal market to get their medical cannabis. And that's very risky, because Texas, we have our laws, and our laws are very strict. You can't have it. If you're not on the compassionate use program, you cannot be using cannabis of any sort or any type, because you will get in trouble for it. And veterans did report that they got in trouble for it. That was actually one of the I guess, surprises that I had when I asked veterans, how has cannabis changed your life? And they've said that they've gotten in trouble with law enforcement. We have people that have risked their lives, that served for this country to make sure that we are safe. And when it's our time to make sure that they're safe and that we're helping them, we are arresting them. We are giving them tickets. We aren't letting them medicate with their choice of medicine. And that's just not right. You have a veteran that could be going through PTSD, going to buy their medicine, which causes anxiety. So that in and of itself, just the change, the exchange of that purchase causes anxiety to the veteran. So it's very counterproductive in a sort. And a lot of it does have to do with the limitations of the compassionate use program. The THC limitations are a huge problem. One of the biggest problems is the list of conditions that are applicable for this program. It's very limited, and cannabis doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care where you live. I mean, not cannabis. Diseases don't discriminate. It doesn't care where you live. They're going to get you whether you're here or in California. And in California, they can treat it better than they can here in El Paso, or I mean, here in Texas. And the reason I said El Paso was our biggest response came from El Pasoans. Biggest response, all of El Paso. Thank you so much. My hometown. I do have to give you a shout out. It definitely makes up for you guys being the first city in the United States to criminalize it to begin with. So we're headed on a great start. But that's very indicative of what's going on in El Paso with the veterans out there, because in New Mexico, they have a reciprocity program. So this means that an El Paso resident can have a California medical card, take it to a dispensary in New Mexico, and receive medical cannabis through their program, thanks to their out-of-state and reciprocity program. So this is something that we really need to pay attention to. Texans are speaking, and they're saying we're either going to get cannabis through the illegal market, or we're going to get it legally in the out-of-state market. As a matter of fact, veterans are spending up to $630,000 a year just on in the illegal market. And this is about out of 425 veterans, this is about 30% of those veterans are spending that amount of money. So that's a lot of money for a little bit of people, and a lot of veterans in the state of Texas. That equals a lot of revenue for Texas, which turns back not only to veterans, but to our schools as well. So, we're purchasing not only to save our lives, but to improve the lives of others as well. Another thing was, we did, of course, ask, as you know, the people that took the survey, if anybody had tried to commit suicide and if they had suicide ideations. That is a topic, that we're going to be talking about today, or one of the topics. And we did. We had 20%, just over 20, so 21% of our veterans reported that they did have suicidal ideations. That's something that we definitely, it's not a good number. 1%, no type of number is a good number. On top of that, we did have veterans that also reported suicide. And with that, the most reported suicide, I think we had over 10 of them that reported 10 attempts or more, the largest one being 12 attempts. This averages it out to an average of 3 suicide attempts between all of our veterans. That's unacceptable. One suicide attempt is just too much. There's no reason why there should be any veteran in such pain that they have to try to take their lives up to 12 times. I just want to hug that veteran, whoever you are. I just want to hug you. And I'm so happy that you found cannabis. I really, really am. And it's veterans like that just make you want to work harder, because there are others like them. They're not the only one out there. If there's one, you're going to find another, more than likely. And that's something that our veterans should not be killing themselves after they've served this country. We need to do better for them. Our medical services need to just do much better. And we're letting them know how. We're letting them know what one of the tools could be. Now, one of the important things, which leads me to my next point, is cannabis isn't for everybody. Not a lot of people can tolerate cannabis, whether it be the psychoactive effects or any other effect. What the study showed was that not all veterans were using just cannabis. They're also using Western medicine. They're using medications like Xanax and codeine and things like that with the cannabis. So it seems that cannabis is kind of a supplement to ease down the side effects and to kind of boost the effect of the medication, because the medication alone isn't helping them unless it's at a very high dosage or has a combination of other medications. The same with cannabis. Cannabis alone does not help them with their conditions. So they need that extra boost of Western medication to help them get better. That's really interesting because up to this point, there's not a lot of studies that are showing which medications can be safe or even effective when used with cannabis. And veterans are telling us down to a dosage, how many milligrams of cannabis with how many milligrams of medications they're taking. So it's something that we really need to pay attention to, because, biggest worry out there, or one of the biggest worries out there, is that the pharmaceutical industry is going to go down into flames because of medical cannabis. Well, it's not. They were both meant to help people, and they can't help people by themselves in all cases. So it's better that they work together. This is going to be a big boost both to the economy, but to people's health. Another big number that came out was the amount of veterans that are disabled. Most of our veterans are, disabled or retired, and they're dealing with pain. That was the biggest reported condition is pain. Our veterans are in pain, and us three know, one of our service connected disabilities, it's chronic pain. So like Sid Miller said, is that we should be able to use our type of medication, even, just for pain, for a toothache. And it helps for a toothache, and down to, any type of back pain or whatever back pain you may have. And veterans are talking to us about this. But yeah, veterans out there they're using cannabis. They're using it in Texas, and they're using it illegally. These veterans are essentially, they're alive by illegal means. And that's, they're choosing to be alive by illegal means instead of just choosing to stay sick and possibly legally dead at some point because of these medications that are not helping them. But again, like I mentioned earlier, cannabis could also help these medications. So it's not an end all be all for medications, definitely not. We just need to be more open to all the capabilities of cannabis. And by decriminalizing, by legalizing, and just by extending the laws in Texas, it allows people like me to research and find out more about cannabis and how else it can work with Western medicine to benefit the patient.
Awesome. Thank you so much, V. If you don't mind, I'm going to toot your horn a little bit. So V is participating in one of the first cannabis therapeutics and science master's program at the University of Maryland. So that is really awesome. And then she's actually working with the Baker Institute and the Foundation for Informed Texas to publish this study. So it's really exciting. In fact, Baker Institute of Public Policy was like, I think there's so much data here, we should do a couple reports. So it sounds like you'll be doing maybe 3 or 4 different reports that you'll be releasing. So I just wanted to thank you for that. Thank you to Baker's. Thank you to U of Maryland for making sure that this is a topic that we continue to talk about. I know that Dave worked with Professor Martin, Dr. Martin, on a really, at the time, groundbreaking kind of like expose report that he did. And Baker has continued to be interested in these policies, and not only in harm reduction for arrests and penalties, but also for making sure that the program really works. And they have had a very strong focus on veterans. And so it's really awesome work that's being done.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, V, and thank you, Baker Institute, and Dr. Martin and Kat for Catlin for helping us from Rice University with this study. We really appreciate it. I was at Rice University at Baker Institute for an event several years ago, and we had a panel with a state senator and some other people talking about why Texas needs to legalize cannabis, and a person, an activist from New Mexico who helps veterans was there, and she spoke, and she said what they see in New Mexico is the symptoms of PTSD go way down just because the veteran now lives in a legal state and doesn't have to be paranoid about being arrested for using cannabis. And Veridiana mentioned that we purchase our cannabis illegally in Texas, or if veterans go to another state to get it legally, they still have to bring it back illegally. And I know that when my supply gets low and I'm like, well, I need to go make a purchase, I sure wish that I could get in my truck and just drive around the corner and go to a legal dispensary with a certificate from Texas on the wall and make my purchase. But that's not what happens. I have to, I'm very lucky. I have connections that are very caring and compassionate, but I have to leave my town and drive somewhere to renew my supply. And you talk about the symptoms of PTSD kicking in, hypervigilance, paranoia, anger. Every single time I'm angry as hell because I don't want to break the law. I don't want to be a criminal in Texas. And it makes me angry that the state of Texas makes me be a criminal to use cannabis as medicine. And so I have to deal with all these emotions just to go get some money out of the bank and go drive to purchase cannabis for medicine and then drive back. And the route I have to go, you know, I pass the DPS, I pass the local police in several different townships. The sheriff, you know, might be roaming around out there. And so, you know, hypervigilance, paranoia, anger. For what? Well, I mean, why? Why do I have to go through this? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And of course,
plant.
Yes. And of course, that cash that I'm using, you know, I'm very happy that the people that help me are able to finance what they're doing. But it would be nice if a little bit of that money went to the state of Texas for good projects too. And Texas don't get none of it. So that is so true about veterans and patients having to use cannabis illegally. Just the purchasing part is a horrible experience.
Yeah.
It is. And you know, I completely relate. You get this anger and this, it's combined with this anxiety because you're put in a position that that same battle buddy that served with you in that same war but lives in California does not have to go through. They can just go and buy it, get it delivered. I mean, I get it in such varieties that you couldn't even imagine. And even what we get in Texas, you know, through the illicit market, it's still very limited. It's still not even a little bit of what they have accessible medically in Colorado and California, New Mexico, and all of the states that, you know, just legalized. It's insane. And we shouldn't have to go through that just because we live in different states.
Absolutely agree with that. So Jason, I was wondering, I was trying to think back, what was the first event that you participated in with the veterans? And I was having trouble remembering. Can you refresh my memory?
Oh, I can't remember off the top of my head either.
I feel like it's just been years that I've known you and we've been doing this.
It was just last year.
Well, what I remember is me and Jason met and he started riding with me to the Capitol. And so my understanding, my poor memory is that Jason's first events that he participated in was our actions up at the Capitol last leg session. Isn't that right, Jason?
Yeah, it is. And that's exactly where I met everybody. And it was on patient lobby day, the day that I showed up. And Dave and we had met at the Reggae Fest. My son had introduced us because my son had Dave as a school teacher. And I was still working at that time. And I told Dave, you know, a little bit about my story. I was like, well, I told him that I had a story and that I used cannabis to, you know, overcome a bunch of pills. And I was like, whenever I'm ready to tell my story, you know, I would love to come tell it to you. And he gave me his card and he told me to hit him up, but I think I'd lost it. but the day that the patient lobby day at the ledge session of was the day that I really met Dave, and he heard my story for the first time because we went around to Senator Buckingham's and Brad Buckley's Rep Buckley's office, and I think I told one of my story to one of the offices.
I know I remember very vividly last session after the floor conversation about the medical cannabis bill with Senator Campbell and I think it was Senator Birdwell, if I'm recalling correctly. Yeah, I was down trying to hustle and you know, work for some more improvements and conditions, and I turn around, there's Jason with his wife walking up like, what is going on up in here? And that's when I was like, oh, he's not going nowhere. He's ready. Okay, let's go do this. So I appreciate you diving in head first and participating in all these events and continuing to share your story, and especially like your family story too. I know that a lot of people focus on veterans, of course, but veteran PTSD and issues, they affect the whole family. And I feel like Amanda just always speaks just like so sweetly and compassionately about it. And I think that it's important that families of veterans feel represented as well. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Amanda, tell her thank you.
Hey, and it's an honor to have this platform to do that. And we thank you guys for allowing us to do this.
Absolutely. I was wondering, do y'all mind if I share a couple photos real quick? So Operation Trapped is something that we created a few sessions ago to amplify veterans' voices and to make a visual impact on legislators up at the Capitol. And the first year that we did it, I'm going to share this picture with y'all real quick. This is what our exhibit looked like. We had a couple hundred bottles. Now, inside of each and every one of those bottles is a veteran's story and a little toy soldier. Some of the soldiers have been adjusted to reflect the veteran's disabilities, perhaps by removing an arm or a leg. One veteran actually just broke it in half because he said he just felt broken. And it talks a little bit about how cannabis has helped them. So each and every single one of those pill bottles is a real person's story. And where this is located is actually in the hearing hallway down in the bottom of the Capitol. And every legislator has to walk down that hearing hallway to get to do their business. And we had veterans at that table every single day talking about this. And I think it was up for a week, if I recall correctly. And then this last session, we actually got, I want to say it was almost 500 pill bottles submitted. And one of our volunteers, Eric, made this casket that you can see here. And we put all of the pill bottles in it, and it was displayed down in that hearing hallway again. And there was a video montage that was created with some of the veterans' stories. And so these are some of the things that we've done in the past for Operation Trapped. And of course, now we're at this point where we're reimagining what everything looks like. And so we're thinking, you know, how do we make Operation Trap effective in this session? And so I wanted to kind of turn it over to you guys to talk about, you know, how did you feel about these experiences in the past, and what do you think we might be able to do in the future?
Well, one of our legislators has proposed the idea of 1,000 veteran march at the Capitol at some point during the ledge session. Now, whether we'll be able to do that under pandemic conditions, we don't know. But it sounds like the seed of a possibly great idea. And so Jax and me and Heather and Jason and Betty-Deanna, and we'll all talk about this as the legislative session progresses. And think about what kind of event will we be able to have at the Capitol during the ledge session to bring a large number of veterans together to make a statement about medical marijuana. And if we're able to do that, we'll have our coffin there and our pill bottles, and Jason's son and Jason's son's girlfriend took the lid of the coffin that Eric created, and they painted it, made a work of art out of it. And the lid of the coffin is painted black, and then the words on the lid are PTSD kills, marijuana heals, and there's a marijuana leaf and some pills. And so our goal during this legislative session is to display that coffin again with our pill bottles and with our new part of it, which is the lid of the coffin that Jason's son created, and get our message across. PTSD kills, cannabis heals. And so we'll have a lot of discussions as we get into the lead session based on whatever the rules are going to be and the pandemic conditions about what we can do for Operation Trapped in 2021.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how we overcome all of these obstacles, because at this time, you know, if you guys don't know, the Capitol is not open at all. You cannot even go into the yard of the Capitol. It is fully closed and shuttered. So, you know, people are unsure of how the pandemic might go over the winter, and so I'm sure they'll err on the side of caution. So thinking outside the box is really important. So to anybody out there, if you have, you know, virtual lobbying or virtual action ideas, I would love to hear them. I know that we're going to be instituting an email delivery system where we can verify who's opened, who's clicked it, and make sure that we're following up with any offices that haven't. So I think that, you know, perimeter ideas are going to be really important for outside of the Capitol. And then also, you know, how can we bring the visual of like all of these veterans into their inbox potentially? So it's going to be an interesting session, that's for sure.
And I want to say one thing. Our country is very divided between Democrats, Republicans, you know, those outlaws, the libertarians, you know, and it seems like if you get on social media, you know, the Republicans hate the Democrats hate the Republicans, everybody hates the libertarians. and so, and by the way, I'm not trying to start an argument,
but
I voted for the candidate to pledge to legalize cannabis in this presidential election. So I'm not hating on the libertarians. But here's the thing: we can't let that affect our work for cannabis, because legalizing cannabis and medical marijuana is a bipartisan, tripartisan issue. And so if you're a Republican and your legislator is a Democrat, don't say, I ain't going to talk to this Democrat. Same thing if you're, you know, a Democrat and your legislator is a Republican. Don't say, I'm not going to talk to that evil Republican, you know, representative. We have to have good relations with our legislators, regardless of our political views and regardless of theirs, and find common ground on the issue of medical marijuana is what we're working on. And so no matter who your legislator is, and no matter what, you know, his feelings or her feelings and your feelings are on other issues, you and me and all of us need to make sure that we establish a personal, friendly, professional relationship, beginning with the staff, meeting the staff, getting to know them, and then working our way to the legislator, so that we know that we have a good working relationship with that legislator. We've never, you know, I have a Republican state representative, and I don't agree with all of his positions on other issues. But he totally agrees with us on medical marijuana. And for example, Senator Birdwell up in Waco, he thinks medical marijuana is the devil's weed. He's a retired lieutenant colonel from the Vietnam era. And Jason went up there and met with him. And I'd like for Jason, if you can, for a minute to tell us about that meeting with Senator Birdwell, because this is the perfect example of how we deal with our legislators. And Senator Birdwell said horrible things about cannabis on the Senate floor last session. But Jason went up there and met with him, and they had a fantastic conversation. Can you tell us about that, Jason?
Yes, thank you, Dave. First off, Dave drove me up there because I had been trying to get a meeting with him and Senator Campbell at the same time, and one of his aides contacted me, and it was a pretty short notice, I believe. It was within 3 or 4 days. I told Dave that I had the meeting, and Dave was like, "Hey, I'll drive you." I was like, "All right, cool," because Waco's about an hour away from here, and vets and PTSD and road rage, those all things go together. So
Very real.
I might be a little bit more uppity whenever I went into the meeting, and if Dave had not taken me. But I was pretty level-headed whenever I went in there, and usually, I'm not going in there to try to rip anybody's head off. I just wanted to go in there and talk to him and see what he thought about it. And he scheduled me for a 30-minute meeting. We spoke for over an hour, and he was in the Pentagon whenever it was blown up during 9/11. He has third-degree burns over 70% of his body. Whenever the people went to drag him out of the Pentagon, they were actually like, his skin was coming off of his arms. That's how bad he was burned. And he's had to take a bunch of pain medications, and those pain medications have done some irreversible effects to his liver and things like that. So he's not able to take medications any longer. And I wasn't aware of a bunch of that. I was aware that he was in the Pentagon, but that was, an opening for me to speak about it. And I spoke to him, from a soldier's point of view, a senior NCO. I told him that I tried the way that the Army and the Western medicine wanted me to heal, and I said that wasn't working for me. It led me to suicide. And he told me that he believed that he knows that cannabis has some benefits, but he just doesn't believe that smoking cannabis was medicinal, and it sounded like it was on the same part of him, or the same level as heroin. Because he said that, people aren't growing poppy in their yard or asking to grow poppy. And I laughed at that. But
because you totally can just buy it at Home Depot, but okay, whatever.
It's just there.
But and today is, the poppy, I believe today is right. Never mind.
It's a signal of soldiers. I know in Britain, but I'm not sure. Yeah.
But anyway, as we went on, his aide that was there, she opened up with the story of how her father was dying of cancer, and that the only thing that brought her father out, and it wasn't the cancer, and she was able to see her dad, was through cannabis. And he's like, well, how did he use it? And she told him he smoked it. And I looked at him and I was like, you see, it's medicine. And I don't know if something clicked in him. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. But, she had never told him that story before. And she had probably been just waiting and just hoping. And then whenever I left, she told me thank you. And that, that she had that platform. And at least she felt like she was supported at that time to tell him. But I'm not sure if his views are changed on it anymore, but we had a real good discussion. It's very cordial too. We got this awesome picture at the end where we're both smiling, grinning from ear to ear, like we've been friends forever, and it was a really good meeting. And then I did have a meeting with Senator Campbell after that as well, but that one took quite a lot longer, and that wasn't until this year.
I think it just goes to show that people that are brave enough to talk about it really do empower others. She might have heard some of the things that Senator Birdwell said last session and felt too fearful to bring up maybe, what her situation was. So whenever we share it empowers others, and it may empower them in another moment in time. It may not be right then like it was with you, Jason. So I think it just continues to show sharing your story and having that personal relationship is super important, because these legislators are people. You know, they aren't always treated like people on the news or, you know, with pundits, you know, talking smack about each other, but they are. They're people who have feelings, and they react, you know, better to honey than vinegar, just like we do, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And we know that the big obstacle in Texas, well, we can list the big obstacles in Texas, is number one, Dan Patrick in the Senate. And Brian Birdwell easily won re-election, and will always easily win re-election because he's a hero in that district. So Lieutenant Colonel Birdwell's not going away, as is the truth for lots of our legislators. So we have to have good, personal, trusting relationships with them when we talk about cannabis. But we know the final obstacles in Texas is Dan Patrick in the Texas Senate. And we're working every day trying to figure out how to get to Dan, how to convince Dan to give us hearings for medical marijuana bills in the Texas Senate. And just for everybody to know, there are people working with us that can't, you know, they're not working with us publicly, but they're working behind the scenes. So don't think that every Republican in the Texas Senate is opposed to medical cannabis. That is not true. We have powerful allies in the Texas Senate on the Republican side and the Democrat side. The issue is the guy who's in charge of the Senate. So we're working on that. And the other big obstacle is one of the most powerful groups in Texas are the law enforcement associations. So we're also discussing how can we establish good communications with these law enforcement associations to convince them to not oppose a medical marijuana program in Texas. We need them to stand down from telling lies and falsehoods about what will happen when we establish a medical marijuana program in Texas. But just like with our legislators, we can't be hating on law enforcement every day and saying terrible things to them. We have to establish a professional relationship with them because they don't think they're telling falsehoods. They believe what they're saying. And so we have to be the living, breathing, talking testimonies to show them that we're not criminals and we shouldn't be treated as criminals, and we're rational, logical citizens leading productive lives using cannabis. So those are two big obstacles that we have to deal with.
You know, I see a couple kind of questions that we have here and in the comments on Facebook. And so I want to take this opportunity, you talking about the Lieutenant Governor, to also talk about the new Speaker of the House and the Governor. So as most political junkies like me would know, the former or soon to be former Speaker of the House, Bonin, had a scandal, if you will, and didn't run for re-election and is no longer going to be the Speaker of the House. There were quite a few people vying for it, but it seems like Chairman Dade Phelan is rising to the top of the pack with really strong bipartisan support in the House. There were, you know, like 40-something Democrats that signed in his support, and almost all of the Republicans, save a few. So it is likely that he will be the Speaker of the House. And so I just want to let everybody know that he was in support of a comprehensive medical bill. He was in support of removing penalties and changing it to a civil fine. And he supported the hemp program. So he is arguably, out of all of the people who are running, is our best option for Speaker of the House. Excuse me. And also he has a good relationship with Joe Moody. They've been on several Texas Tribune panels together, and they kind of have a funny repartee together. So if Joe were to be Speaker pro tem again, that would be great. And then I want to pivot to talking about the governor. You know, I understand why a lot of people are frustrated with the governor. They feel like he has maybe stopped things over the years, and we can argue this or that. But last session, he did sign for a medical cannabis bill to be expounded upon and actually supported it being even more inclusive, but signed what came out of the Senate. He also negotiated with Moody's office to have the civil penalties bill tweaked how he wanted, and had anticipated it probably coming out of the Senate as well if the lieutenant governor hadn't have killed it. And then he also was supportive of hemp. So the governor has come a long way on the issue. Is he totally on board with everything? You know, I don't think that that's necessarily the case yet, but I think he's really come around quite a bit. There's still more work to do there though. And then I wanted to just real quick, there's a question here that I wanted you guys to maybe talk on. Terry wants to talk a little bit about growing your own medicine, and how, you know, some places don't have that home grow component. Currently, Texas doesn't have that home grow component. And so I was wondering if you guys wanted to just talk a little bit about home grow and its importance.
Well, let me say something, and then Jason and B also, because this is so important. We strongly support the right of veterans and patients for us to be able to grow our own medicine. And my personal dream is veteran and patient co-ops, where a group of veterans would be able to have a plot of land and cooperate growing a cannabis crop based on state regulations, and sharing that cannabis. You know, veterans could bring different expertise to a co-op, but that's, you know, on down the road. But we will fight hard for the right of veterans and patients to grow our own cannabis to use instead of paying at a dispensary, and we can grow these specific strains that help us personally. And I know Jason has some comments, and Diana too.
I'll just go ahead. Yeah, the benefits of just having a garden is amazing. And the benefits of taking care of something for me as a veteran and having PTSD has been very beneficial. And having that benefit to grow the strains that benefit me most would be a tremendous benefit to my healthcare. And you know, I could do it however I wanted, hydroponic, organic. There's a lot of different ways to grow cannabis, and to different people that means a lot. Full organic to me would be the only way I would want my cannabis to be grown. And we go back to those certain strains that you could grow yourself too. And some of those strains would be like a mixture of a 20-to-1 ratio of like a CBD THC, because that's something that I think that would be very beneficial for me with inflammation and things like that. Over to you, V.
Thank you very much. Yeah, you know, I could not agree more. If you can grow tomatoes in your garden at home, why can't you grow cannabis too? You know, farm to bong, I guess, instead of farm to table. So you should be able to do that, because yeah, like she mentioned, a lot of times it is the big companies that are going to take, you know, this big influx of income, because people need cannabis. You know, the people that use it, they need it. So they're going to continue buying. And when you can see where your cannabis is growing and you're growing it yourself, it's a therapeutic moment also for the veteran. Like Jason mentioned, it's very therapeutic because your mind is busy on something that's helping you. So while you're growing something that's helping you, you're also, the process of growing it is also helping you. So we have to have, you know, that type of connection with something other than, you know, the outside world. So if you can have your own medicine grown at home, you know what's going into it. And there's something about that that's just, it's just so pure. And it's just something that we do need. It shouldn't just be all for the companies out there, because, you know, cannabis is not, it doesn't choose. If it can grow in a yard, it can grow in a yard. It doesn't specific say like, oh, you need a license to grow me. It's just going to grow. You have me in a seed, some water, I'll grow. So, you know, we need to have the ability to be able to grow it in our own home, so that we know what we're doing. And I love the idea that Dave said.
Yeah. And currently
co-op, yeah.
Texas, the absolute worst thing we can do is get caught growing our own cannabis.
Oh my God, yeah.
Anybody that gets caught growing a plant, even if it's one plant, God
Mhm.
help you if you're growing more than one plant, you will never get out from under the legal system in Texas if you get caught growing plants. And so it's absolutely infuriating that the worst marijuana offense you can do in Texas is get caught growing a plant that you personally are using as medicine. And so we have to change these laws so that people are not in being terrorized by our own government for growing a plant that is a gift from God to us.
And
But
from a
poison oak
lobbying,
can, oh, go
sorry, go
ahead.
ahead.
But poison oak can grow freely. And, if you touch it, there goes your skin.
Yeah. And just, from a lobby perspective, talking about home grow, we always have that conversation, and we see consistently that the state is really like overly erring on the side of caution and over security. And it's been kind of the deal killer for some bills having that included. But I think that what needs to be done is more people coming and talking about the therapeutic benefits of gardening, like how it is in other states. Romana talks about that a lot. So kind of continuing to destigmatize the plant that, people are adult enough to take care of it. So we have a couple more questions here that I want to get to, about 3 more before we end. I know we're kind of going a little over our hour, but that's okay. We're having a good convo. So one of our attendees.
We can talk about marijuana all day.
Oh, for
All
real?
day.
Legit. So one of our attendees is asking, how are people of color being included in this effort? How are their voices being heard within Texas and this organization? And if you guys don't mind, I would like to answer on behalf of Texas Normal, and then if you'd like to answer, Dave, as well. So at Texas Normal, we completely recognize that there is a lot of racist influence on the laws here in Texas. V touched on real briefly that in El Paso, they were the first to outlaw personal possession of cannabis, and that was in 1915 or 1913, and they spelled it marijuana with an H because they didn't understand or the Latino dialect, the Mexican dialect, and they were not wanting to have Mexico-Americans coming over to work in El Paso across the border. And so it was used as a tool at that point to criminalize people. And we understand that that has continued. And so what we do is when we break down the numbers, we always make sure that we include the racial disparity and how it's meted out. Across the races, people tend to use cannabis the same, but we greatly see people of color being arrested. And so we talk about that. We don't hide from that. Additionally, we have a policy for Texas Normal that discusses racism and how we will not tolerate it. It is not allowed in our organization. And we recently made sure we sent it out to everyone. I believe it was back maybe in February when some of this social equity and racial injustice was really starting to bubble to the top. We'd had that policy in place for several years, but we thought it was really important to just let everybody know exactly where we stand on it. And in addition to that, I've been invited to speak at a upcoming event on allyship and how we can make sure that whenever we're coming to the table, we're centering around the voices of those that are really being hurt the most by these laws. I try to work with the NAACP locally with Nelson Linder. He's a great president of that organization. And then there's also Austin Justice Coalition. And I've worked with a lot of different organizations in trying to continue to destigmatize the plant, not only at the legislative level, but even within communities, because how these communities have been treated over the years has affected how they look at cannabis. And so it is a very important conversation that I think is going to be social injustice and racial inequity is going to be discussed at the Capitol outside of the context of marijuana, but also within the context of marijuana. So I just wanted to lay that all out there. If you have any other follow-up questions, you can feel free to email me at jax@texasnormal.org. And what about you, Dave?
Well, yesterday I published a pic of me and my communications crew at Camp Taji in Iraq. And if you look at that pic, there's white people, there's black people, there's Hispanic people. There's a guy from Hawaii who's part Asian, part indigenous Hawaiian. And so people use cannabis regardless of their race because, you know, PTSD and injuries, that doesn't have nothing to do with race. And so it's absolutely crucial that us from all races work together for medical marijuana in Texas. But I think that we can all agree that African-American people and Hispanic people have to think twice about getting up in public and admitting using cannabis, you know, with the law enforcement officers sitting there staring at them at the Capitol in uniform. You know, that can be pretty intimidating. So it's absolutely crucial that we all work together to bring a medical marijuana program to Texas, and that we understand there is a racial component to these arrests.
And not being afraid to use our voices to amplify, right? For those people that maybe are afraid to get up and speak about it, for us to be louder. You know, there are fears for people who are parents. There, you know, there's all kinds of these issues, and it really all coalesces for people of color that it makes it so much more difficult. So, and actually, Dave, I think that you helped originally craft our policy on racism, if I'm remembering correctly.
And Diana can, you know, discuss this. She's from El Paso. These laws were racist in nature when they were first passed.
1,000%, completely racist. You know, what Jack said was true. They spelt it even differently because they were spelling it phonetically. And even to that ignorance where marijuana wasn't even a word that people actually used to describe cannabis. It was just, it one day just appeared in literature. It's not actually a word, you know, it's cannabis. And it's just something that we need to get rid of, especially where now, you know, we're seeing that there's people from El Paso, they're using it. And they're using it in New Mexico. So, you know,
you bring up an interesting point, V, about the nomenclature, you know, marijuana versus cannabis. At that same time, when they were making marijuana illegal, you know, you could get bottles that had cannabis and morphine in them for your like pain and cough. You know what I mean? So it was still available, you know, to people who could afford it, to people who looked like the people that were writing the laws. But then marijuana was this illicit thing, you know, different. And so I think that just goes further to show that this is a divide that will help hopefully heal some of these issues that have been around for centuries in America.
Okay.
Oh, I think you're muted, Jason.
There we go. Just how we were speaking of, that's how Senator Byrd will see how he said that smoking cannabis was not medicine to him. That's exactly what you just said, how cannabis was labeled on the tinctures back in the day. But whenever the Mexicans came over and they wanted to smoke it, it wasn't a medicine anymore. That stigma still exists. And that's the stigma that we have to break down.
Yeah, and I'm glad you bring that up because meetings that you had, they're very important to point out because up until his aide said something, his image of a cannabis user was the typical image that you think of when people think reefer madness. That's where their mentality is. It's not based on facts of anything. So anybody that comes to speak to them that has to do with, you know, cannabis, whether you look like Jason or you look like myself, they're going to see us all as the same person, that image of reefer madness. However, the second somebody within his category of people mentioned something, his mindset changed in that split second, like, oh, wait a minute. Somebody else outside of this group is saying something and they're willing to listen to that voice. And a lot of it times, it just does have to do with the way that they grew up. We have to start with the patriarchs and the matriarchs of these families to help them understand that cannabis is not bad and it'll trickle down to all of those generations the same way that everything else trickles down. And, you know, A lot of people that do believe that cannabis is bad grew up a certain way, grew up with certain parents. And once we're able to change those parents, those grandparents, great grandparents' mind, then we're able to change that entire family's mind. And a lot of times, most of these families do have certain powers within the state. So it is very important that we change their minds and that people like their aides come out, because we also need a voice outside of the voice that we're giving other people. Because even with our voice, it's being muted and it's being veiled out simply by the belief that, oh, you all just want to get high. No, we don't. We're not in our basements. We're not that. We're professionals. We're doing things out there in this in the United States just
We're
like they are.
productive people, V. We
We
are so
sure
productive.
Look at us in the middle of the day drinking coffee. We're so productive. But you know, it's something that it's their train of thought, and no matter how many facts we hit them with, it's just not going to change their mind. But what may change their mind, what may cause them some curiosity, is people that have those similar attributes as them saying something. And little by little, we are getting more legislators and more aides speaking their mind and giving our voice, you know, a little bit of, hey, maybe you should listen to this, because it's not marijuana, it's not weed, it's cannabis, it's a medicine. It's not, you know, cannabis doesn't know if you're using it recreationally or medically. It's going to heal you regardless.
It's just there for the endocannabinoid system. That's what it's there for, you know.
That's it. It's just like, hey, this capsule has an endocannabinoid system. I work in here. That's it.
Absolutely. So I just want to hit one or two more things real quick before we say bye to everybody. I see that Jordan has brought up the Vicente Sederberg recent report, which talked about retail market here in Texas and all of the jobs and licensing fees and taxes that can be brought in. And so he's talking about, you know, a big thing is going to be the budget in the upcoming session and making sure that we're driving home, you know, these economic impacts. Of course, that is a main subject and like one of the biggest things that resonates with the legislature. So Jordan, stay tuned. In the next week or two, there should be another white paper that actually is going to talk about the economic impacts of a fully functioning medical program as well. So just stay
let me
tuned.
say something about the black market. I was saying a while ago, you know, whenever I have to make an illegal purchase to renew my supply, I go get some cash to make my purchase, and then that cash ends up in the illicit market. But guess what? It still benefits Texas because the people that, you know, get that cash, they shop at Walmart, they buy gas, they buy groceries, they go to the doctor. So that cash still ends up in the Texas economy. And so what our legislators need to understand is, guess what? There's already a marijuana industry in Texas that's worth millions of dollars every month, millions of dollars every month. But the state is not getting any of that money because it's underground. But the economy is benefiting from that underground market, whether they want to acknowledge it or not. Because that money I spend for my cannabis, and Betty Deanna talked about how much we spend, then that money goes right into the Texas economy. So the industry is already there. We just need to bring it above ground so that the entire state can benefit from it.
Agreed. So let's do one last question and then final thoughts. So Melinda was wondering, and I don't have any advice here, so maybe you guys can help her with this. I found it hard to even be diagnosed with PTSD due to past abuse because I have no insurance. Any advice? Any tips for Melinda?
I wouldn't know because, you know, we all of us here, we had insurance, and I was still active duty, and I actually had an anxiety attack where I fell out in front of a bunch of people, a bunch of soldiers, and I was directed to go to behavioral health, and I've been hospitalized over 3 times. So it was just I think that had a lot to do with it. I'm not sure if you're military connected, but you said that you didn't have any insurance. So I have no experience with that. The only experience I have was with people that, you know, we already had insurance because of the military.
We weren't sitting in the room, of course, but we were told You know, PTSD was going to be included with autism for the Texas Compassionate Use Program based on that bill that Senator Campbell wrote last session. So to Senator Campbell's credit, she did want to include PTSD. But supposedly, what we've been told is Dan Patrick said, if we include PTSD in the Teacup program, everybody's going to claim they have PTSD. And that
doesn't work that way.
And that it doesn't work
because everybody wants it.
Right, yeah, exactly. But there's a certain protocol to be diagnosed with PTSD. I was diagnosed with PTSD at the mental health clinic at Fort Hood by a psychologist and a psychiatrist. And then that diagnosis was confirmed by the Veterans Administration when I retired from the Army and moved from the active Army medical system to the VA system. So three different doctors diagnosed me with PTSD because there's a set protocol that we have to go through to receive that diagnosis. And you either meet the criteria or you do not meet the criteria. And so Dan Patrick saying everybody's going to claim to have PTSD, that don't hold any water because doctors have to do that diagnosis, and they can't just sign a piece of paper. They have to prove with this protocol that the person does have PTSD. And so the only way to get diagnosed with PTSD is to go to a medical doctor and go through that protocol. That's how it works. And so we cannot allow Dan Patrick and other people to tell these lies about PTSD. That's why we were so angry last session, is Senator Donna Campbell got up on the Senate floor and said that 70% of veterans who committed suicide had THC in their blood. That was a lie, which we veterans disproved immediately. And she had to, and we told the media, and Donna Campbell had to apologize for that. And so our work has to be fact-based and based on medical protocols. And so that's the bottom line on PTSD, is that doctors have to do this diagnosis according to certain protocols.
And I think it's something like a 13 or 14 step process. And then just to expound on that, one of our attendees wanted to let Melinda know that some independent therapists do income-based therapy. So that's an option. And then I also know that there are some doctors that will do cash-only clients. So, you know, I wish we had a little bit more for you, Melinda, to help guide you there, but hopefully that'll be a little bit of a starter for you. And then Andrea says, you know, check with your local therapist and then go to the VA for your claim. I'm not sure if Melinda's with the VA or not, so I'm not sure if that would work for you. But I want to go ahead and let's do our final thoughts before we say goodbye to everybody. Do you want to start for SB?
Yes, thank you so much. I want to thank everybody that tuned in to our call. Thank you so much to all those veterans out there. Thank you for your service. Happy Veterans Day. I hope you enjoy your day. To all of our fallen comrades, you know, we're thinking of you. You gave the ultimate sacrifice, and now, you know, we're here fighting for our comrades to make sure that we don't leave another fallen comrade behind. Texas needs to get on the program. You know, 5 different states turned green this past week, and Texas needs to be the next one, because we are a grand state. You think of the United States and Texas automatically stands out. We're Texas, you know, that's just what we do. People can't help it. So they need to just get over it, you know, turn green and let Texans choose their own type of medicine. It's not going to hurt Texas. It's only going to benefit Texas because it benefits its residents. So in a program that we all win, Texas wins. So again, you know, happy Veterans Day to all of those veterans out there. Thank you so much for your service. It's been a pleasure, and we'll continue to fight and let your voice be heard.
Jason, do you want to go next?
Sure. To all the veterans out there that are listening, if you have a means or the way to contact your representative or your senator and you support cannabis, please do. That's all that it takes, just like a simple email or a phone call, and tell them, you know, to support one of those bills that are coming up. And if you're sitting there lying in bed right now and you're watching this, uh, go ahead and get up, brush your teeth, and go out and get some of the sunshine after this. The sun is a wonderful tool to healing. Thank you.
And for you, Dave, what's your closing thought?
Well, veterans ask me, they say, you know, I don't really know how to write a letter and talk about this. I don't really know how to write my testimony. And this is why I tell them, you talk about you. You talk about your experiences. You talk about your feelings. That's all you need to do. Don't worry about scientific studies and all that. Jax and Heather will take care of that for us. They give our legislators packets with all the scientific evidence. And we take it around and give it to them during the lobby days. When we talk to our legislators, we just need to talk from our heart and tell our story. That's what's most convincing. You don't need somebody else to write a letter for you. Your story's already right there in your head, right there in your heart. And you tell that story because what you're telling is the truth. No matter what you say about your experiences, that's the truth. And our opponents, when they talk reefer madness, they're telling lies and falsehoods like senators did on the Senate floor last legislative session. So we're going to continue to speak the truth, and our stories are the truth. And we're never going to stop telling the truth because this plant is from God, and we want all of our veterans in Texas to be able to use cannabis as medicine, or at least have the option.
Absolutely. So my final thoughts is, as always, I want to give you guys resources. So if you're curious about how to craft a testimony, you want to look for some resources, if you go to texasnormal.org and click the activist training tab under take action, it's going to take you to all kinds of links and information, a video that we did on crafting testimony. It'll help get you all prepared. I've seen a couple of people asking about these awesome shirts, and when we're going to do some more of them, they are limited edition shirts. We do once every year or two, and we'll probably be doing one during the legislative session, so stay tuned for that. And then for all of you veterans, if you would mind taking a quick moment today and going to our Take Action page at texasnormal.org, and make sure you click the medical cannabis one, any other ones you want to do too, but that, and share your story. It's already got a form letter there, but you can edit it however you want, and it will go where it needs to go. And then make sure that you're on our email list, because that's how we will keep you updated on the bills, on the action alerts, the blow-by-blow of the session, and that is definitely where you need to be plugged in. Some of you guys have wondered, will this be available, this video, afterwards? Of course, it'll be living in perpetuity on our Facebook page, but we're also going to download it and put it on our YouTube channel. So go to the Texas Normal YouTube channel, subscribe there, and anytime we add a video, YouTube does this cool thing where it just notifies you, hey, this video's there, and you can go and watch it. So it'll be available there. And so on that note, I just want to thank each and every one of you watching today for your service, and to you three, to your service, not only to your country, but to your fellow veterans that live here in Texas and that require this medicine. You are amplifying their voice and being great allies for them. And I appreciate and am inspired by each of you, and it gives me the motivation to keep going up to the pink dome up here at the Capitol and banging heads wherever I have to. So thank you to everybody. I'm going to go ahead and stop this video, and it's been a pleasure to spend this last hour and a half with you guys.